a lot more comfortable going back to school. So without further ado, we're going to get started with the introductions. But just before we do that, I want to state that all opinions are our own, and everything we say, we can't tell you what the Peel District School Board is going to do or what the Ontario Ministry of Education is going to do, but we can tell you the experiences that we've had.
Okay, so we'll start with the introductions of the speakers. So my name is Swati, and I'm a data analyst for Sparkin STEM. And a fun fact about me is I like watching movies and playing soccer.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Gerline, and I'm the Public Relations Coordinator for Sparkin STEM. And a fun fact about me is that I just got my driver's license.
Hi everyone, my name is Sharabi, and I'm also a data analyst for Sparkin STEM. Fun fact about me is that I have a twin sister.
Hi everyone, my name is Sia and I'm the finance coordinator for Sparkin STEM. And a fun fact about me is I can play over 5 instruments.
Hi everyone, my name is Puneet. I'm an activity coordinator for Sparkin STEM. A fun fact about me is that I've played on 10 different sports teams, like different sports, like a proper sports team.
Okay, so just to go over what we're going to talk about in this information session, we're going to start off just talking a little bit about course selection and what your schedule, what those little numbers and letters, what they all mean. Then we're going to go into time management, a little bit about balancing social life with school, how to get involved in high school, and then how to prepare for September. We're going to be ending the session with an open Q&A period where you guys can ask us any questions that you might have about high school, life in general, anything like that. Okay.
Okay, so courses. When you go into high school, in grade 9, especially for me, it can seem a little weird that you don't actually have course names, you get letters instead. So each course has its own specific code. So it starts off with 3 letters, which indicate which subject it is, and then a number for the grade. So 1 for grade 9, 2 for 10, 3 for 11, and 4 for 12. And then a letter that indicates the level. So for example here, D9 is advanced placement, D0 academic, P applied, L locally developed. But for other schools that have their own specific programs, it could be a bit different. And then O for all levels, which anyone can join in that grade. And for gym, you'll have F or M at the end, which indicates class. In grade 9, you will have your 1 gym course. And an example here that we can see is, if you go on to the next slide, SNC 1DO or 1D0. SNC stands for science, 1 stands for grade 9, and then D0 for academic. And you'll get 8 courses for this in grade 9. And yeah. This just makes it a bit easier to tell what part of the course or what part of or what type of course it is, because it can be a bit weird and takes time to get used to see what course you have, but it's not that hard once you get the hang of it.
So going forward, when you're picking courses for grade 10, 11, and 12, you'll see that in grade 10 at least, the first 3 letters will remain the same. So for example, even in grade 12, ENG is always going to be English, but when you get into other courses, like your business course, the first 3 letters might change. So you might have BBI, BTT, and so it can be a little bit confusing. What I'd recommend is you talk to the teachers at your school, or you talk to other students who have taken that course before, just to help you clarify what the course is, make sure you're actually in the right class.
Also, if you ever have a question on what the course code means, a good resource is to use My Blueprint, because it actually tells you the name of each course.
Yeah, and also just to add on to that, when you do course selection, you will be using My Blueprint for sure. So when you click on a course, it'll also have a general description as well as something called prerequisites in the description as well, which means in order to take that course, you'll have to have those courses already taken in previous years in order to do that. So when you are, when you're in higher grades, you're gonna need specific courses in order to get into that course. So for example, let's say you want to go into grade 11 physics. To get into a university level course, which is the same as like the academic pathway, you would have to make sure you take academic science in grade 10 and academic science in grade 9.
And in terms of courses and timetables, I know that at least for the Peel District School Board, you're supposed to be receiving all that information next week on September the 4th. So that's something that they've said on their website, but if you're in a different school board, definitely check with the reopening plans to see when you'll be receiving your timetable.
All right.
So now we can talk about time management, which is a key concept in high school. So this year, learning is going to be online and in person, and being able to integrate that both in your study schedules is a great way to be able to balance your academics. So personally, I like to create schedules or using planners, agendas, online sticky notes, anything that helps you. And these help you organize your time and your commitments to be able to go through each one efficiently. So personally, balancing academics and extracurriculars can be done easily doing creating schedules. And in grade 9, it is very important to get involved. Getting involved meaning practicing in extracurriculars, networking with people, socializing is a great way to make new friends and be able to transition into high school and get used to it. So personally, I like to use schedules, as I mentioned here, and they help me create a great habit for studying. So starting my assignments early, planning out how I want to finish my assignments, planning out my responsibilities for my other extracurriculars are great ways to transition into high school and get into those great study habits. And in our registration form, a lot of people were asking about exams. So if we do have exams this year, and from our experience, what we like to do was space out our review. So for example, if we're taking a grade 9 science course, let's say there's 4 units for that course. Personally, what I like to do was do a unit per week to ensure that I could space out my review, space out the content, and be able to cover everything I need for the exam in a timely and efficient manner. And the key concept is do not procrastinate. I know a lot of people tend to do this in high school, and I know that sometimes you can start to procrastinate with a lot of things on your plate, but always try to keep your schedules intact and be motivated to do your homework and don't get slacking. Something I would like to add is that spacing out your homework or your assignments is a kind of the best way to go about them. So for example, if you get an assignment during the week or in the beginning of a week, spacing out your time so you can finish it according to the due date is the best way to do it. So that gives you time to, I guess, talk to others, find more resources, or even have a different point of view when you're working on the assignment to make your project the best you can make. So that's why procrastinating is not suggested, especially when having online classes. I know that a lot of people tend to procrastinate because it seems easier right in front of you and you can do it anytime, but it will cause you to have way more work at the end and just not give your 100%.
Also, something I'd like to add is that in grade 9, your course load is relatively light, which is why it's super important to develop very good study habits now, because when your course loads get a lot heavier when you're in higher grades, you would kind of rely on those good study habits to come in handy, I guess. Whereas if you're trying to figure out what works for you in grade 11 and 12, you might get yourself into a little bit of trouble.
And in terms of using tools for time management, when I was in grade 8 and 9, I used a physical planner where I used to write down everything I had to do that day. But what I'd recommend is what I ended up switching to is using online platforms. So one of the things I like to use is Google Calendar. You can see it kind of looks like this. And the cool thing about Google Calendar is you can actually connect it to your school account and you can open your calendar on any device, whether that's your phone or your laptop. So you can actually just put in like when a project is due. And to use, there's a lot of cool tools out there for making to-do lists and keeping track of your work. So I could talk about this forever, but 2 tools, if anybody wants to write them down and kind of look at YouTube videos or explore them, would be Notion and Google Keep, which really have helped me stay organized throughout high school. And I'd really recommend playing around with things and seeing what works for you.
Also, one more thing I wanted to add for exams, the do not procrastinate part, I want to stress a bit more on that. Don't leave it for the last day or even the last 2 or 3 days, because I did do that in grade 9. And honestly, sometimes it might work, and just because it worked one time for one exam that you didn't study much or you left it for the last day and you did okay on the exam, it doesn't mean it'll work for every single exam. Especially when you get to grade 11 and 12, you have a lot more work that you need to cover, a lot more units. And so leaving it for the last day, you're either going to end up staying up all night and not being prepared for the exam, or you're just not going to be able to finish everything that you need to go over. And even if you like think that it isn't too much work, studying earlier won't hurt. If anything, you can do it again the couple of days before. Studying twice won't actually, it will help you more. If you study something again, you'll know if you missed anything or if there was anything that you weren't completely sure about. Because on an exam, literally anything can come up, and yeah, so study in advance.
So in the high school community, January and June tend to be very stressful months. Back when we had semesters, January and June are kind of the end of the semester. So we have summatives, which are kind of like the final projects in your classes. So for example, in my grade 9 business class, we had to make a business and a website for it. That would be a summative. And then there's exams, which are pretty much the last week of that month. For like 4 days in a row, you'll have an exam for each class. So like the first day will be your first period class exam. So what I'm trying to say is there are definitely a lot going on in those months. Due to quadmesters this year, there's not going to be exams, but there will be summatives. So you'll probably be doing 2 major projects at the same time. And spacing your time out for those is very, very important. So focus on what to do first, make a plan for it, and I promise you, it might seem overwhelming and you might think you'll never get it done, but the minute you finish those exams, you go home and you take that post-exam nap, you will be very, very happy that you've spaced out your time.
And just a final thing I want to add before we move on is kind of like a life hack when it comes to exams. There's so many online resources that tell you exactly which topics usually come on like Ontario issued exams. So if you just follow that and read your notes based off of that, that's going to help you and save you so much time instead of like going through all of your notes and studying things that may not be important for the exam. Go through the study guides that your teacher provides for you, as well as make sure you cover all of the major topics that are listed in those online resources. All right. Okay.
So the next thing is social life, and believe it or not, it is possible to have a social life in high school, and it's actually very important. And so one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give to anyone is talk to older students. I know there's always a stereotype that like you're going to get nired and the older students are going to bully you, but I guarantee you, you will find a handful of grade 11s and 12s who genuinely do care about you and they want to help you. And the ways you can find people is through Link Crew, which is an initiative in all Peel schools where on the first day, only the grade 9s go, and a couple of grade 11s and 12s come to kind of give you tours and do activities with you, and they'll check in with you throughout the year. There's also various clubs and teams. So when I was in grade 9, I joined DECA at my school, and that's where I met a lot of the older students who helped me throughout the years when I didn't know what courses I should take next year or how to study for exams, stuff like that. So I definitely recommend, even if you don't have any clubs at your school this year, and you find someone who goes to your school on Instagram and they're, talking about school on their story or something, be sure to, hit them up because I'm sure they can give you a lot of good advice. And it's so, so important to network and know older students who will continue to help you throughout your high school year. And that kind of brings me to my second point, which is participating in extracurriculars. So sports, teams, clubs, and organizations, I know we will talk a lot more about that on the next slide. But even if your school doesn't necessarily have any clubs this year, that's not something for all schools. I don't know that yet. Because of COVID, things might be a little bit different. But definitely take these opportunities to talk to people and make friends. You might think you can go through high school completely alone, but the truth is you can't.
All right, so next up is we have getting involved. So arguably, I feel like this is one of the most important things of high school because that's what I've enjoyed the most personally. So extracurriculars is where you get to meet all of like people who have the same interests as you. That's where I met most of my friends today. So in all high schools, there are so many different types of clubs you can join, and they have a big variety of them. The main kind of divisions of how they're usually split up are sports, the arts, academic, and organizations outside of school. So for sports, maybe you don't know if you like a sport, if you're good at one, yet they usually have schools usually have intramurals during lunch where you can play around with friends and kind of feel out your love for the sport. And obviously right now things are going to be a little bit different, but once your school allows for it, I definitely recommend you joining that. And then once you go to intramurals a little more, you'll be able to also join school teams, and there are junior and senior teams available, so you get to play with people of your age group. Then when you go into arts, there are a bunch of different clubs you can join. You can join choir, bands, drama, musicals, anything, you name it. And that's where you get to sing your heart out, dance, and kind of express yourself creatively. Then we have more academically focused clubs, things like DECA, HOSA, and robotics. This is where you kind of learn how to think on your feet and kind of challenge those type of skills and develop those skills. And finally, we have organizations outside of schools, so things like nonprofits and volunteering. So these are usually the Instagram accounts that are all following you right now. And these are super duper helpful because they have so many opportunities for high school students to get your 40 hours for volunteering. They can lead to internships or even summer jobs and things like that. So now
I guess we can, go ahead, Sia.
Okay, so if everyone, I was just going to say, if everyone wants to speak on, I guess, one extracurricular, and then you guys can talk about that. So does anyone want to start? I guess I can start. So something we have at our school is a program called Strings. And so an art extracurricular I joined was orchestra. And through that, I've been able to move upon levels. So in grade 9, I didn't know how to play the viola at all. I was a complete beginner. But next year, or this upcoming September, I'm going to be in concert, which is one of the highest levels of strings. And I get to play around the city, as well as share my talent with other people of our age group in high school of different grades as well, who also play string instruments.
So I'll go next.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. This is like the classic everything that's wrong with Zoom classes where you don't have the raising your hand, so you don't know who's going to talk. But I guess this is just a taste of what's supposed to end up being like in September. But my story with clubs is that when I was in grade 9, I joined this club called DECA, which is a business competition. And I had zero interest in business. I'm like, I'm just going because all my friends are going. And I ended up loving the club so much. I got to travel that year. I got to spend a weekend in Toronto, and I got to fly to Atlanta, Georgia with some of my best friends and spend a week there. And so, definitely step outside your comfort zone. You might think when you enter high school that you're going to have one career path, one vision. And as you explore these extracurriculars, you'll realize that maybe you didn't know exactly what was out there for you until you tried it. So that's my story. Swati and Sharabi, do you guys want to go next?
Yep. So I can start. I was part of HOSA, as mentioned here. It's like an academic club. It's more science-based. So personally, I did the public health contest or competition where we had to create a presentation about public health. Specifically, we chose to do allergies. So you could do it with a partner. I did it with my sister, and we competed against other schools and other people around Ontario and Canada. I know there's a lot of other things health-related. This competition was health-related, and it was very fun. We had to think critically and network with other people with similar interests, people who liked sciences like I did. We got to compete together. We got to prepare for different challenges, and it was a great experience. I highly recommend it. And I think that it was a great way for me to network with people in my grade and people who are older that could help me with my courses and my subjects. So it was a great way to network, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I can talk about another club, Model United Nations. So I've been a part of that since grade 10, and it's a club where you kind of simulate the United Nations and you talk about different issues and different problems around the world based on different committees. So during our first year, my sister and I were representing France in a general assembly where we were able to participate with kids from different schools around Ontario and fight for an issue. We chose non-communicable diseases, and we were able to win Best Novice. So that kind of sparked our interest and allowed us to go to further provincial competitions such as SIGSAM at University of Toronto and different competitions around the world. So currently there are so many different options that you can do in Model United Nations. So it's all based on your interests. So that's a club that I enjoyed.
Okay, so I guess I'll start off with robotics for a bit. So I joined robotics in grade 9, and honestly, it's a bit different for every school and also based off your interest. So as you can see, for academic, there's DECA, HOSA, robotics, all focus on a little like different aspect of whatever you want to be in the future. And robotics, there's a lot of things you can do in your school and outside. It starts off with just joining your team, trying your hardest, doing whatever you want. And then once you get into the community, you go to events, there's different places you can go to. You can volunteer outside of your school for different events and other stuff they have. So I've been to many different competitions, provincials, worlds in Detroit, and it's just a great club. You get to meet many people, as well as the actual working part. You make a lot of new friends. You can make a lot of good contacts, I guess, and you can get to know people outside your school as well. And I'd recommend joining a lot of clubs. It's different for schools. I know not all schools have robotics, or they have different types of robotics. Some have Lego, some work with FRC like we do. There's FDC, others robotics competitions that you can join. But yeah, a great club to join. And other than that, I'm going to talk about sports a little bit too. One thing I want to say about sports is don't be afraid to join a team or trying out. Even if you think you're not good enough or you won't make it, it doesn't hurt to try out. Go to the tryouts, go to intramurals, get involved. Even if you don't make the team, you can get to know teachers, you can get to know older students, other students in your grade who have similar interests to you. And it's just a great way to go. Like, I didn't join many teams in grade 9 or 10, but I've went to all intramurals because honestly, you have nothing better to do at lunch. Like, our school has like an hour and a half at lunch. You eat for like 15 minutes and you have nothing better to do. So just go play a sport. If you're interested in it, just have fun. I don't know, make friends and try out for different teams.
And to add to that, like, if you don't see a sport that you literally like enjoy doing, you can start the team. For example, at our school, we didn't have a girls table tennis team until like I started one in grade 9, and then that's how it kind of took off from there. So don't be scared to start a team or a club just because you guys are in grade 9. If you have a passion for something, definitely follow through with it.
To add on to what Sia said, there's a lot of opportunities where you may not find yourself not feeling connected with different clubs. Especially as a grade 9, you may feel like an outcast or not feel like you want to join anything. And if you see that there's something lacking or something that you would want to change, it's really good to start at grade 9 and start from nothing and build up as you go through high school. Like Sia did table tennis. For example, in our school, the science department never really had like a tutoring session kind of thing. And so my sister and I and Gerline started a tutoring program where we tutored grade 10s and 9s when they entered our school with science. Especially when we were learning chemistry, we found out that it's really important to teach younger students, and we would have loved that help when we were in grade 9. Something I would like to add, since no one talked about volunteering outside of school, we know that you have to make your 40-hour requirement to graduate high school, but that doesn't mean that you stop at 40. It's a really good way to get networking, get experience in like the real world, and kind of put yourself out there and find what you really have interest in. So volunteering is a really key aspect that I would say helped me decide what type of field I want to go in or what type of courses that I would like to take. For example, I volunteer at the local hospital, and I do a lot of volunteering at my local music school and dance school. So those kind of help me integrate my interests into what I'm choosing for courses and still get those volunteer hours.
And just something to add for that is consistency is key, especially because as Shrabi said, you don't want to stop at 40 hours. And I feel like if you start volunteering somewhere that you really do like in grade 9, being able to go there, it's kind of like a break mentally for you where you get to do something you enjoy for maybe like 1 or 2 hours a week. And if you do that from grade 9 to 12, you're going to build up a lot of hours and a lot of people you can talk to that you can further reach out for maybe future job opportunities or internships or things like that. And I guess that's how I started too. Like, I got my first internship over the summer because of my connections and because I volunteered with people, and then they helped me reach out to other people. And on top of that, that's just how networks work, I guess.
If I can add something, just hi everyone, I'm Ananya. I'm part of Sparkin STEM too. You just can't see my face right now, but something that's really important that I kind of wish I knew in grade 9 is the fact that a lot of these clubs, the reason why there's people from all grades involved is because clubs like teach you how to do everything from the beginning. So like in DECA and in HOSA and in robotics, if you're a beginner and if you don't know anything, which for the most part, like I didn't know anything going into DECA, I didn't know anything about business. but clubs and like there are people there and senior students who know a lot. There's teachers that you can reach out to feel more comfortable in these clubs. So a lot of them have specific skills like public speaking in Model UN, or like putting yourself out there in robotics to, you know, get to actually work on the robot. So you'll develop these skills through high school. And if you stay in a club from grade 9, and if you stay in it up until grade 12, there's a huge chance of you getting leadership opportunities. And then when you get leadership opportunities, that looks really good on your resume. It shows that you've taken initiative in your school, and you can mentor younger students who are in the position that you're going to be in September.
Okay, I want to add one last thing about the whole volunteering thing. Everyone always emphasizes to start in grade 9, and I think you should do that. Like, really, it does help. And like for me, I didn't start in grade 9, but I had that period of like panic where I realized everyone else has a lot of volunteer hours. I'm sitting here where I have nothing. So I had to like find a bunch of places and do a lot in my grade 10 year. But don't leave it like that, because at one point in grade 10, I think I was volunteering like 2 hours every day after school. So that was, and it gets hard to like work with homework and everything. So if you start in grade 9 and just keep like a steady schedule all the way up for high school and do 2 or 3 hours a week, it's more than enough to get you a lot of hours. You'll get more than 40 for sure.
So now we'll just talk about how to prepare for high school. Although it is online and in person, there's a mix. There's still different things that you can do to prepare. So the first thing would obviously be preparing your supplies. Different people have different learning styles, so it's best to find how you like to learn and incorporate that into what you buy or what you use for high school. So for example, I'm kind of a visual learner and really like to write my own notes. So that way I use a lot of different markers, pens, notebooks, and binders. So I'll just go through each course and say what I use, and through my experience, what you would mainly need to use and what you would require. So first I'll start off with math. A lot of math courses tend to require grid paper notebooks because those are really helpful when drawing graphs or doing any of that. So I would personally use one of those. Science would be similar. You would also need like a notebook to write your notes, or even like an iPad or somewhere to have your own notes. English, French, and geography usually don't require that many notebooks or binders. It's usually a lot of online work, such as writing essays or typing stuff out, but you can always have a folder to put in loose worksheets or loose paper. Physical education or gym kind of changes this year, where you have to wear your gym uniform. So something I would do for gym is have hygiene products or your own uniform or gym clothes always, and have an extra pair of clothes if anything gets dirty during gym class. Arts and electives kind of have a separate list, as there are a wide variety of what you can choose. For example, instrumental band, you would have to require an instrument which you can rent or purchase. So I can use an example to how I write my notes, since I use more of a binder. So here I have my psych binder. So in that, I usually have different line paper notes and that are really colorful because I want to be attracted, I guess, to learning them. And I think Sia can show you how she takes her notes digitally.
Yeah, so for the last year, I went completely digital because one, I just got an iPad, so I felt like I should use it, and it helped me a lot, mainly because I didn't have to carry like 2 or 3 binders and a bunch of lined paper. So this is how I just had all my notes organized like this, and as you can see, it's kind of the same thing as Shravi and Swati, where there are a bunch of colors and things like that, except instead of carrying 2 binders every day, I would just carry my iPad and a pencil case just in case we had in-class work to do that day.
Also, just going back to one of the courses, which is math, I was told going into grade 9 to have 2 notebooks in math, one for your homework and one for your notes. And that's something that might not work for everybody, but I would highly, highly recommend it, because when we were, in elementary school, a lot of the math we learned, we didn't really take notes in class, I would say. And coming into high school, you'll have a lesson in your math class, and then you'll have a ton of math homework to do for practice, because I think math is one of those subjects where you learn by doing practice. And so I would recommend that if you are taking math at all, which you all should be, make sure that you keep your notes and your homework separate, because when it comes to exam time, even if there's no exams this year, but in the future, it's a lot easier to have your notes in one page, in one space, and then your homework in another space. So you can kind of look at the lesson, then look at some of the practice questions, instead of having everything kind of stacked in the same booklet. But again, that's a personal strategy, definitely. As you go through high school, you'll learn what works for you and what doesn't. Like Sia, she went from paper notes to digital notes. And so it's really up to you what works for you.
Also, going back to Gerlene's point, like I still use my grade 9 math notebook today because there are so many concepts in grade 9 that you need to know for grade 10, that you need to know for grade 11, that you need to know for grade 12. And I found that if I had homework in between my notes, I would kind of get distracted from the main subject or the actual learning portion of it. So by switching or having one notebook for notes and one, I just had lined paper for my homework, and then I would put that into to a separate binder as soon as the unit was done. It was super helpful for later years because I just have one notebook now that has all the concepts that I learned in grade 9 that I can refer to whenever I need it now.
And I think it's really important to keep your notes from high school. Like right now, this is my grade 10 notebook, and I have some grade 10 bio notes in here. And I'm taking biology again in grade 12. So I still have these things that I can refer back to. Like I don't really look at my middle school notes anymore, but definitely throughout high school, keep all those things with you and make that habit in grade 9 and 10. Because when you get into grade 11 and 12, you're going to be learning things which are the basis of your university or college courses. So I would highly, highly recommend, don't be one of those kids that burns all their notes after exams, because you'll never know when you need to go back and look at that.
Okay, guys, so this is the coveted question and answer period. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hand digitally on Zoom, or you can put it in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer any questions we may have missed or anything that may have arisen during our presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone want to start us off?
Don't be shy. We were all in your position. We understand your feelings, and we don't be shy. Even if we're older, we still have experience to talk to you about our experience in high school. So ask any questions you guys have.
Also, if you're interested in a specific club or a specific organization that anyone mentioned, and you're looking to go into those clubs in high school, now is a really good time to ask, because all these people, I can assure you, have amazing experience in all these clubs.
I think all of us here have very variety. We kind of cover most of the clubs that schools offer. Okay, so someone asked, are we going to school for 5 hours with no breaks? No. So you're going to be getting your schedule soon. And I can't speak for every school board, but the way that Peel has it is you only have one in-class class a day, and then you go home before lunch, and then you stay at home for the rest of the day and do all of your other classes online.
Yeah, so kind of building off of what Sia just said, the way it's going to work is that you're in a cohort. And so let's say I'm in cohort A. I'm going to go to school on Mondays and Tuesdays, and every other Wednesday I'll go to school. And so on the first day, I'm just going to go to my period 1 class for 2.5 hours, and then I go home and I'm digitally learning for the rest of the day. The next day, I'm going to go to my period 2 or my other class. Same thing, I'm only there for 2.5 hours, and then I go home. And the rest of the week, you're doing online learning, but you can find a very, very detailed plan on the Peel School's reopening website if you're in the Peel District School Board. So definitely read that.
Simmerdeep asked, are we having beginner strings this year? Yes, we are. We have beginning strings every year. Okay, Susan asks, I missed most of the webinar and I'm in grade 10. What's an organization system you used?
I can talk about organization. That's something I really love. So personally, I think I'm kind of old school. I used a planner. I had a physical copy. So in this planner, I know that in grade 9, maybe you don't have as much commitments, but I always note down anything. Any test a teacher tells me, any assignment, I went to the day, I went to the calendar, put it in. And at the end of the day, at the end of each class I had, I always wrote down what I had to do for each class. For example, I would write pages 256 from questions 1 to 4, have them done. And I do it in an order so that I know when I get home, I could see what order I want to start my work and how I want to finish them. So I also like to order them in my priority, in how I want to finish them first to last. So if I have something that's most important, I want to put that at the top and stuff like that. Something I would like to add is that I use the sticky note feature and Google Keep. which is basically a software, I guess, or website where you have little sticky notes where you can write different things that you want. So I have a sticky note for each extracurricular I do and each class I do. So when something pops up, I just write down the due date or what I have to do. So as soon as I open that Google Keep website, I see all the work laid out clearly. So I know what to start with and how to go about it.
For me, I personally don't have the best memory, so the reminders app on my phone really helped me because it actually like gives you an alarm for when you should do things. So I would usually just write all of the homework and then I get a notification, and then that's how I know what I have to do for that day for the next class. All right.
Any other questions, you can put them in the chat.
You can say them out loud.
If there's any parents here as well that have questions about what it's like having a child in high school, I'm sure we can speak on behalf of that, because your relationship with your parents is something that will definitely evolve throughout high school. You will have parts where you're not very close with them, and hopefully by the end of it, you're back to having a pretty good relationship with them. I know for my parents as well, it was difficult because your child is growing up and things are changing, and communication is so incredibly important. Give your child space, I would say. I was very thankful that my parents kind of let me do what I wanted. They let me join the clubs that I wanted, but there were still rules that sometimes I didn't agree with, but I respected. And I think it's very give and take. And that's something that is specific to everybody, and you'll figure it out with your own parents when you guys are in high school.
Does anyone have any other questions? Like Nanya mentioned earlier, clubs that you guys might want to join, you want to know more about, anything like that?
Something I would also recommend is checking out the link that Ananya put on the chat. And it's that reopening guide. Looking through that will give you an idea on how high school will work this year.
And then again, I feel like when you guys do get your schedules, you're going to have an all-encompassing review of exactly what's expected of you and all of the rules specific to your school. Because again, it changes based on your location as well.
So I know that we kind of mentioned that extracurriculars aren't going to look the exact same this year, and Tia talked about organizations outside of school. And so some of these organizations you might find on Instagram or on other like places in your city. Like something I can think off the top of my head is BMYC, which is the Brampton Multicultural Youth Association. Sorry if I butchered that one, but it's basically just a multicultural association in your city. And I think their applications are open right now. So even though you might not be having clubs at your school, there's definitely opportunities in your city for you to take. And again, the same thing applies. Like, look for opportunities, see what you're interested in. If your school doesn't have a robotics team, look for a community team. So definitely follow your passions, because that's so important. It'll help you when you're choosing your courses, when you're picking your career path. And yeah, so going on to another question I just saw pop up in the chat, is exploring technologies the same as robotics?
I took Exploring Technologies, so I can talk to you about that. So Exploring Technologies was a course in grade 9. And I wouldn't say it has to do a lot with robotics. It's more about exploring different technologies like hairstyling, automotive engineering, woodwork, and stuff like that. Personally, in my school, we didn't do a lot of robotics, not anything. It was kind of a really fun class for me. I'm really happy that I took it. I had it first semester, and some projects we did, I'll give you an example, was building like a bottle rocket, building a race car, like a CO2 carbon dioxide pumped race car. And we also did different things like claymations, where there were like stop motion videos. So Exploring Technologies has like a wide range. Yes, you do learn a little bit about robotics. I think our year there were something called M-bots, which are little robots, and they use that in Exploring Technology classes to introduce robotics. So it's a good start if you're planning to go into engineering or take robotics or computer classes later on in high school. For example, I took another class called ComTech in grade 10 or 11, I don't remember, it wasn't 10. Grade 10, where that was way more focused on computer engineering and robotics. So for example, a project we had there was to disassemble and then reassemble a computer. and program different robots. So exploring technologies really opened my eyes to taking different courses relating to it.
Also, when you get into higher grades in like grade 11 and 12, there are robotics courses available. If it's not available at your school, it's definitely available in summer school. So if you do find an interest in robotics, there are definitely courses that you can take.
And one of the things that you unfortunately can't do in grade 9, but you can do in grade 10, 11, and 12, and something that we will talk about at an upcoming session where we're going to be talking about course selection, is the idea of fast tracking. So when you are picking courses for grade 10, which is actually going to be a lot sooner than you think, probably around December of this year, you can actually take grade 11 courses while you're in grade 10, as long as you have the prerequisites for it. So when I was in grade 10, I took grade 11 accounting, and that was it's called fast tracking when you're taking a course for a year ahead, and it basically frees up your schedule in upcoming years for you to actually take more courses. So this is something that maybe doesn't apply to you just yet, but if you're looking at courses in grade 10 and you're like, all these sound boring, I don't want to take any of them, know that your options aren't limited. There's definitely a lot more out there, and you shouldn't be afraid to take risks.
Talking about fast tracking, I wish I also knew this in grade 9, was in grade 10, there's a course called Civics and Careers, where a lot of students tend to take that in grade 9 summer school because it's kind of an easier course and has a lower course load than any other grade 10 class. So if you do take any course in summer school, then that frees up your grade 10 schedule to take grade 11 courses or fast track. So something I would suggest is taking summer school if you think you will be free.
I definitely agree, especially because in grade 10, you still have like required courses you have to take, like history. And for me, I'm in strings, which is a required 2 courses per year as well. So if I didn't fast track civics and career, and if I didn't do that in summer school, I wouldn't be able to take any elective courses. And since I was able to free up that space, I was able to take 2 grade 11 courses in grade 10 because a lot of the grade 10 electives didn't really interest me. I feel like the grade 11 courses have a lot more content and they go more in depth, so it's a lot more interesting once you get to higher levels.
Something that I just also want to speak on is entering high school. It is a pretty big transition from middle school. For me personally, I experienced this huge gap even in knowledge. I feel like through the summer, everything I learned in grade 8 just went in 1 year and out the other, and I really struggled in grade 9 math, and it took me a while to realize that a lot of people go through the same thing, and a lot of people struggle with the knowledge gap and with the fact that you feel like when you're in high school everything matters 10 times more. And if you feel that way, trust me, there's thousands of kids who have been in your place before, including me. And so something I just want to say is, don't be afraid to admit to yourself that you might be struggling in some sense. When you admit it and when you seek help to solve the problem, you get a tutor, you attend there's Count on You programs in high school for kids that are struggling with math. When you take that step forward, you'll realize how much easier it is to do well in high school later, because you'll have acknowledged the problem earlier and you'll be able to deal with those kinds of problems, and you'll have the knowledge and you'll have the resources needed. It's a lot harder to do well in higher years when your marks matter more, and when you're denying to yourself that you might be struggling with this, that you might not be understanding the concepts fully. So don't be afraid to get a tutor. Don't be afraid to go to summer school, do all these things. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean you're failing a course. There's no correlation between those things. Just because you're struggling, it's always good to seek help and get those resources, because the sooner you do that, the better you'll do.
Exactly. Teachers are there to help you and to help you learn. And that's what they will do as long as you approach them for help. All right.
So this was our first Q&A session where we talked a little bit about, getting into high school. But we have 2 more planned. And the first one we have upcoming is September 19th, 2020 at 2 p.m. EST. And we're going to be talking about regional programs in Peel. So that includes the Advanced Placement or AP program, IB program, Science and Technology, International Business and Technology. And so we're hoping to get students from all these programs to kind of come in and share their experiences. I know that schools do have their own regional program nights where you usually hear the teachers talking about how great the program is. But if you do want some raw experiences and stories coming from students, that's what our next session is going to be about. So if you know anyone who's currently in grade 8, who's going to be going into high school next fall in 2021, and they're applying to regional programs, definitely let them know that we have this awesome opportunity coming up for them. And our second upcoming Q&A session will be on November 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And it has to do with Ontario courses. And so we're going to be talking about selecting courses in Ontario. So that includes students who are currently, or as of September, are going to be in grades 9 to 11, who want all the tea about their electives for next year, like what's going to give me the highest marks. If you're in a program like AP, which we pretty much all are, and we can tell you about what courses we took AP, what the exams were like. So if that's something that appeals to you or applies directly to you, definitely attend that session. And we're going to talk about how planning for university and college is something that you should start doing when you're choosing courses for the future. So everything you'd hear from your guidance counselor, but by us, because we're cooler.
All right, thank you guys so much for coming. If you have any last minute questions, feel free to ask, but you are free to leave because that is the end of our session. Thank you so much for coming. And remember to tell all your grade 8 friends to sign up for our next sessions coming up.
Thank you, everyone.
Hope to see you all soon.
Bye, guys. Bye. Thank you for coming.